and welcome to this week's episode of Food from Fiction. We're going to tackle Paradise Lost by Milton, and we're going to make an apple cake in honor of the most famous apple in history. So first we're going to start by making a streusel top for it. So I have some, move Milton out of the way there. I have some cold butter that I'm going to slice up into small pieces. I have flour, oats, and sugar, which are going to go in my bowl. And then I'm just going to add the butter into the mix in small pieces. And then, like making a pie crust or biscuits or anything kind of that starts with that crumb texture, we're going to cut it in. And this is the old-fashioned way of doing this rather than with a food processor, so bear with me. But this gives me a chance to talk about Paradise Lost and the evil apple. I realize this is a topic of conversation that could be considered a smidge controversial, so I'm going to do my best to keep my beliefs out of it and just stick to some fun facts. That way it's enjoyable for everyone. Alright, almost done with this butter. So the famous apple scene of Eve and Adam in the garden with the serpent and the apple tree takes place in book 9 between lines 400 and 1100. It's a lengthy thing. And one of the interesting things is how today Milton is sort of the bringer of the apple as being the forbidden fruit in the Abrahamic religions. In the ancient Hebrew, the word used in those scenes is actually just refers to like a more generic kind of fruit, not an apple. So how did we go from some kind of mystery fruit to the apple being seen as the catalyst for the downfall? I personally think is a very fascinating thing. Again, my love of history. So the Bible was first translated into Latin by a man named Jerome, and he took some poetic license and translator's prerogative in his translations. And how we end up with a word closer to our modern concept of an apple is through kind of a Latin pun, because the word malice in Latin long time ago kind of had two meanings. One was bad and one was an apple or a fruit with seeds within. So that starts the long course for creating what we understand as the Adam and Eve and the apple in Milton. Alright, so my strudel's done. I'm going to put it in the fridge so the butter stays nice and crisp. Alright, onto the cake portion of our apple cake. Every culture that has come into contact with apples pretty much has their version of an apple cake. I am still searching for my favorite one, so maybe this one will be the winner. I have some softened butter that I'm just going to cream a little bit. There we go. And I'm going to add sugar to that. And and then I'm going to cream them together. So as we left off, Jerome added a delightful Latin pun to his translation of the Bible by adding malus pulmia, which is, you know, bad fruit, bad, or apple, whatever you want to think of it. It's clever. All right, we're going to add 2 eggs into this mixture. Hopefully my eggs don't make a huge mess. So as I said, the word for apple that we use now in Latin originally meant any kind of seeded fruit, so like a pear or a fig or something like that, a pomegranate, which is why a lot of the really early Christian art has various different fruits in any of the Garden of Eden scenes, because there wasn't a standardized fruit at that point. By the 1500s, artists had pretty much decided they liked the apple the best. So when Milton came along in the 1600s and was writing Paradise Lost, the language for an apple being the forbidden fruit had already been established by artists who had all just sort of unannounced agreed to paint and draw apples from there on. Alright, I have flour, baking powder, cinnamon, and salt, and I am going to add it to my mixture. So Milton comes along and he writes Paradise Lost, and he writes this beautiful, beautiful epic poem. And while a lot of people today might struggle, I think initially, if they really thought about it, the English, I think, is still fairly accessible. And it's real, so it's beautiful, it's flowery, it's over the top, and at the same time, he describes, you know, like they were hungry at lunchtime, like really concrete things that people still can relate to. Okay, I am going to add a little bit of milk to my cake batter to help just loosen it up a bit. And then we are ready to assemble our cake. There we go. So the interesting thing about Milton writing about the apple is not actually the fact that Milton seems to have really cemented the apple as the idea of the forbidden fruit, but rather that Milton becomes part of the canon, and all of the language and imagery that comes out of Paradise Lost that he creates is then taken into the Catholic, the Protestant, the Christian canon, and is added in. So it is both a piece of English literature as it is an epic poem, but it's also been adopted by the church several hundred years ago, so this is all past tense. And that is sort of what helps make the apple be the forbidden fruit as we know it today. Okay, time to assemble our cake. Let me grab all the parts. Alright, we are ready to assemble our cake. I have a springform pan that has been greased, and I'm going to put the cake batter directly into there. Maybe. One of the things I enjoy about epic poetry, which Milton since Paradise Lost is considered an epic poem. It's in blank verse, if that matters to anybody out there watching, is that you can read one book and it's almost a standalone thing, and then you can come back and read more if you want, or you can just stick with or pick up from wherever you want. And I greatly appreciate that. As someone that has spent many years reading epic poetry, I think it allows the modern reader time to stop and consider and really explore the language without getting too tied up in the story and the action. So that's my sales pitch for Epic Poets. Okay, now I am going to place some thinly sliced apples all over the top of this cake. I just used whatever was laying around. I peeled them. I'm going to put them in a pretty design. It's nothing fancy. If you have tart apples, that's better than sweet apples. Obviously there are kinds of apples that are exponentially better for cooking than others. Alright, and last goes our strudel, or streusel topping. I realized earlier in my excitement over Milton that I forgot to say you should keep cutting it until it's like coarse sand. So hopefully you'll keep that in mind. So you just top the apples vaguely evenly. I have the oven preset to 350. And just gonna spread this a little more evenly here. And that's that. So we're gonna put this into the oven, and then hopefully it turns out well. Alright, I just took our cake out of the oven and it smells delicious. It's puffed up a lot. I'm going to wait a little bit longer before releasing the latch. That way it has a little time to set, and then dig into it. The recipe I was reading and using for this episode suggested eating it with a warmer cold custard. So if you decide to try it, try that as well. I hope you give Milton a try. I hope that you enjoyed my little brief lecture about the history of apples being the forbidden fruit. And please send me links and recipes for your favorite apple cakes. That way I can finally figure out what my favorite one is. Hope you're all having a great week, and see you next time.